Good morning, spacemen. Welcome to Space Operations Delta. My name is Captain Collins, and this is Tides of Avarice. This is the new DLC for X4 Foundations, and we're going to talk about the scrap economy today. Before we start, let me tell you very quick, thank you Ubisoft for providing an early access. Although they give me a copy, I'm not affiliated or sponsored in any way, and they do not see the video beforehand. All footage you see is from a pre-release beta and is a preview. Things may change until launch. Patch 5.0 and Tides of Avarice will launch on March 14th, 2022 on Steam and GOG. Pre-purchases on both platforms are already available. I want to start with information directly from the encyclopedia to understand how recycling became a thing in the X universe. After the Jumpgate shutdown, there was only a limited amount of resources to work with in the Avarice systems. So stranded Argon engineers started developing various recycling facilities. Following the arrival of messenger drones from Sacred Relic, the people of Avarice sent out drones of their own to other disconnected systems. These drones contained blueprints for their recycling technology in the hopes that it would be of help to others who were unfortunate enough to be stranded with no natural resources to hand. In the process, they created a local branch of the Alliance of the Word, operating out of Tidebreak. With the first jump gate reconnected, the Alliance of the Word moved to its own station in Windfall. So far for the background of this whole economy and also some insights in why certain stations are in Windfall. Now let's move on to the process of recycling. And therefore, we start with the economy in total. Like I said in videos before, you gather scrap to process it into other materials. But before we dive into this, let me tell you that you can support this work I'm doing here over at Patreon. The link is in the description, and I would love to expand the value on Patreon in the future for the people that support there. So far, thank you for whatever support you gave. Now back to scrap. Where do you get this scrap from? There are a few ways. One would be you simply gather it in Windfall 4, where scrap is one of the natural resources in that sector. There you simply gather it. The second and more interesting way is to collect wreckages. These wreckages are leftovers from fights or in Avarice from the hazardous region, and you collect them at recycling stations, which I will cover in a minute, and process these there. Wreckages can have different scrap values, even if you collect the same ship type, they vary a bit. So a Xenon M, for example, will not always have the same value, but it should be always less than a larger Xenon P. To transport scrap as a natural resource or a wreckage, you will need a manticore, which is the tug ship. These ships are operating as your miners, if you want to call it like that. Even when you are dismantling destroyed stations or larger ships with your Toita, the manticore will ultimately need to bring them to your scrap processor. But what are you getting from raw scrap? You know the input, but what is the output? Well, you get two wares out of this. First is hull parts, and the second is claytronics. Together with energy cells, that is everything that the economy in Avarice needs to build ships and stations. Let's have a look at the logical overview of the Riptide Raker's Wharf to see what I mean. Here, you can see what I just said. The three materials are everything that the station is asking for to build ships. Unfortunately, if you are building a wharf in Avarice, you will need all classic resources for shipbuilding. One giant thing I have not talked about before we take a look at the production modules is the massive need of energy of the process of recycling. To convert 1 unit of raw scrap into scrap metal that can be broken down to hull parts and claytronics, you need 10 energy cells. Now, to give you an idea of how many you need, a Xenon M has roughly about 500 raw scrap, and a Rattlesnake is already around 15,000 raw scrap. Multiply that with 10 and you see the amount of energy needed in the first step alone. In a next step, you convert the scrap metal. The ratio between scrap metal and energy cells is 450 to 21,000 for hull parts, and 1,800 to 72,000 for claytronics. All in all, the energy required is massive. You also see protection in the overview. Without saying too much, the wording of that material should be an indicator of what it is used for. In Avarice, you've got one advantage. The sunlight yield is gigantic because of the highly active and occasionally erupting sun. One single energy cell production is capable of producing 145,000 energy cells per hour. And that can get up to more than 200,000 with additional workforce. These numbers are really something else. To enter into the recycling game, you simply need 2 new structures on your station. The scrap processor is the drop-off point where your manti-cores will bring the wreckages or cubes, and this module produces your scrap metal. Be aware, scrap metal is a solid resource and needs solid storage. In the next step, a scrap recycler transforms the material into hull parts and claytronics, which are simple container units. The scrap recycler and processor are also available as a Terran resource version. And when you build this in a normal sector, that station can end up looking like this. Though this station is not yet finished. That's the build plan for it, and it will take a lot of time to finish. If you want to see the final result, join me over at twitch.tv/CaptainCollins, where we will be streaming Explore the next 2 weeks exclusively. And to not miss any video in the future, hit that sweet subscribe button now, and you are in here for a treat. Thank you so much for watching, and see you for the next video.